Hello everyone. Welcome to Brewing Talks, a podcast show that exclusively have amazing conversations around the topics of brands, ideas, businesses, marketing, entrepreneurs, and a lot more. We are in the season 2 and I'm very glad for that because this is a never-ending topic, right? There's going to be consumer mindsets evolving, new brands entering in the market, new trends entering, especially after the pandemic. So there's lots to talk and there's lots to converse, and hence we have our industry experts, to join us on this show. I am Madhulika, the host of the show, and I'm also an entrepreneur, I'm a marketer, and of course, a very passionate podcaster. So this show, before we I introduce you to today's, guest for the show, it's a very important and a very relevant topic. In fact, when I was talking to this person offline, and we were like discussing, okay, what are the things we should discuss during the podcast show? I think he really came up with this very good insight about, two things. I mean, I'll start with the first and that's campaign and whether campaigns have commercial viability, as they say, the so-called ROI component of campaigns, right? And the second is about the storytelling part. So we'll definitely, as we move on, with the show, with the conversation, we'll get to that. But I'm going to first introduce you to our guest, and he is Mr. Vikram Berry. Hi, Vikram. First of all, welcome to Brewing Talks.
Thank you so much, Madhulika, and really an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today.
So Vikram is currently the area director of brand and content marketing for Radisson Hotels South Asia. He's based out of India, and he has, as I said, a very extensive experience. He has worked with different other brands like the Taj, Accor, and he also has exposure with the airline industry. So I mean, it's going to be amazing to understand his point of view on a lot of topics that we end up discussing today. So once again, Vikram, welcome to the show. And I'm going to start with the most pressing topic of every marketer and business owner, particularly today. Let's say, even when we speak to business owners, there's the only one thing that we listen to, we are asked by them is that, what is the ROI, right? It's become like it's like a template, that it's going to be asked eventually. So first of all, we also know the fact that campaigns have been in existence since the beginning, that people have decided to advertise or promote their brand or talk about their brand's vision. We have enough case studies from different categories of industries today, right? From a brand campaigns perspective. First of all, how do you see what is the evolution of this whole campaign itself has happened over a period of time? Has it taken a different turn? Like, for example, why I say this also because of the pandemic, a lot of things have evolved. Consumer mindsets have changed. So do you see there is a shift in the way people look at campaign and how campaign is defined in the first place?
My background predominantly moves from sales into marketing and into various elements of the commercial sphere of a hoteliering lifestyle. So fundamentally for me, when I took over marketing and I started getting more actively involved in marketing, I think this question that you've asked me has been of extreme and paramount importance in terms of ROI. As a salesperson, as a marketer, I think it becomes important for you to start developing an entrepreneurial mindset to be able to see an ROI for everything you do. However, measurements of those ROIs vary and have changed from time to time. And that has really evolved, not just for the India landscape, but I think globally has evolved a lot post-pandemic, and also in the new ways that we do business, and also the new generations that have come up and the new enlightenment that we've had in terms of various channels of distribution. To answer your question initially first, how has that changed? Have campaigns changed over the years? How have campaigns become different before and after pandemic and all? Yes, there is a vast difference, and there is a huge difference. If we go back about 2 decades ago, especially for the India landscape, you will go back and remember that a lot of campaigns were fundamentally tactical campaigns where there was a discount offered or there was something that was a value addition that was given because the competition was very different. The number of brands available in the market were very, very limited, and the availability of rooms, hotels, experiences were very restricted in terms of what the customer could really experience, either in the form of business or in the form of leisure. I think if I look at the last 10 years or the last decade, that things have changed, and the way there has been an influx of multiple brands that have come into the market, into the landscape of South Asia, the way the pandemic changed the way we looked at things and the way business was being looked. I mean, for me as a salesperson also, there was a whole new segment that took place for us, which was called the business leisure segment. And therefore, it became very important to be relevant in the market, Madhulika. From a point where there were only tactical offers where everything boiled down to the last dollar or the last rupee that you spent, to now campaigns becoming more about awareness, about availability, about the landscape. And campaigns are no more just about an X amount of discount over the best available rate online, but campaigns are also about a certain brand being available in a certain market. Let's take a case, an example of one of the most popular destinations, Goa. You name the brand, they are there. You name the category of brands, they are there. You name international, domestic, everybody's there. Today, when Goa goes into high season, people are really not looking at what is the best dollar. Of course, there is always that competition on a price point, but people are also looking at which are the brands really available in that market, because not only from a brand deliverable point of view, but also from a brand loyalty point of view, from a point earning point of view, from a point redemption point of view. So there are multiple components that have gone into decision making now. And therefore campaigns are not just anymore like previously just about, a discount on a room only, a discount on breakfast edition, a discount on one extra meal. A campaign today is also to tell a customer that, hey, you know what? I am here in this market to give you this value addition, to give you the right experience, to create and curate that experience for you. And that's how things have evolved over the last 2 decades. Storytelling has evolved over the last 2 decades. And it has become extremely, extremely important for us to be very aware of that. And that takes me to your next question that you asked me in terms of ROI. Marketing is a very interesting place to be in, because not everything we do is tangible, and not everything we do can actually be measured in an immediate impact or can be recorded in an immediate impact. But like when we were discussing on the call the other day, I think there are so many other parameters for looking at the way you are actually rolling out the success of what you are actually creating and how you're putting it out in the market. So let's give you a case and example which has off lately become very, very popular in the marketing system, and you would know it better also because of your entrepreneurial skills. Today, when we put a campaign out, our benchmark really becomes to the number of clicks, the number of views, the number of followers, the kind of visibility we are able to bring onto the board, onto the table. Because as a marketing person, my core deliverable is to make sure I catch as many eyeballs as I can. Conversions are dependent on a lot of other parameters, right from rate parity, best available rate, rates that are being offered, what is the kind of experience that is being offered. All those go into the decision making. So that absolute conversion comes at a different point. But for us as marketeers, campaign creators, for awareness creators, I think for us, our KPI or our benchmark really goes into how many eyeballs did we actually get rolling? How many clicks did we get? How many people actually made the effort to follow the journey that we wanted them to follow, or view the journey or the experience that we wanted them to view? And today the electronic world allows us to capture all that information. And that is a very, very key ROI, because that also supports the other part of the business in the commercial sphere, which is sales or revenue, to know what is going right and what is going wrong, and at what point are we not losing the customer, or at what point are we making sure that the journey is complete, to either make corrections or to continue doing what we're doing and improvise on what we're doing. And therefore today marketing plays an extremely, extremely important role in the entire digital space and the offline space that we are creating. Another interesting way of looking at it is evaluate from same period previous times. See the kind of business you did before you did a campaign, and then see the kind of business you're doing post you've done a campaign. You will see some very tangible differences in that. And I think that is the education that most, I would say, operations or most revenue-driven people need to also start evaluating. And they are in a lot of organizations, mine, for example, as well. Now we see the impact that campaigns are making. We see the impact that revenues are coming in by virtue of either a brand awareness campaign or a tactical campaign. That's secondary. And therefore the emphasis on cohesiveness, on the emphasis on alignment, and the emphasis on working together as a team between marketing, revenue, sales, operations has become even more important than what it was earlier.
Correct. No, amazing insights, Vikram. But I'm gonna go back to that one statement you made, and you're so right. Like technically any marketer or a brand custodian will agree to what you're saying. That ROI is not just confined to the final conversion numbers, right? It's also about awareness. It's also about reach. It's also how much you have engaged the customer at that given point of time. Having said that, it's easier said than done. In the sense is, while we may agree to this point, but the other side of the story at times gets a little challenging to convince. So first of all, my question also is that, have you faced a situation where you're putting this point across? Maybe, because I'm sure in your current profile, you are collaborating with a lot of business owners, right? So when you're putting this point across about, okay, this is how it is, but the final question that comes, ये सब तो ठीक है, but what about my final business? Numbers are not coming, because the understanding is very short term, right? We look at very short results that comes to us instantly, and if it doesn't, the long term vision somewhere gets very diluted. So how do you deal with these situations, Vikram?
Beautiful question, and I think that's interesting that you picked that up, because it's something that comes up ever so often when I'm interacting with business owners, when I'm interacting with partners, even when I'm interacting with seniors. I think there are two ways of looking at Madhulika. Of course, we are in a perishable business. We are in a business where today I need heads on beds. And that's what counts. Money in the bank is what makes the difference, and money in the bank is what counts. And therefore, before you get into any marketing or campaigning mode, you need to be so clear and defined on your priorities. You need to be so clear and defined on what is it that you want. Is it that core, immediate conversion and head on bed? Or is it that you are existing in a market where there is enough demand and you need to create your awareness to get your piece of the pie? And that's where your campaigns are then adjusted and evaluated. So to answer your second part of the question is that when a business owner really comes up and says, Haji, ye sab to theek hai, but sale nahi hai meri. You need to go back, and that's when I talked about the alignment and about the buy-in of various departments to come to that core need and ask of the hour. If the need and ask of the hour is that we need to get heads on beds because we're not even getting our fair share right now, and we're not even able to bring in what rightfully should be with us. First, you will evaluate what the market is bringing, right? And you will see, and there are various parameters in the revenue field and in the hoteliering field where we evaluate our fair share as compared to the comp set or the competition that we are operating in. In that case, if you're not even getting your fair share, then it's very clear for you to derive as a marketing person various campaigns to get those heads in beds. And those could be a tactical offer, that could be creating more impressive storytelling, that could be creating more impressive content on the website, and seeing which are the channels you need to push harder, you need to invest in, and you need to start working very closely. And I think that is extremely important for any marketing person to get the pulse on. And therefore, you cannot just... Those were the days when you would just shoot something up because you'd wake up in the morning and said, hey, wow, I have a great idea. Let me take it to the market. Now, times are different. Priorities change month on month. Markets evolve week on week. The needs change month on month. For example, let me give you a lovely example. We have a hotel in a market which is currently operating at 89-90% occupancy through the year. My God, now the ask is no more to just fill up, put in heads on beds, but it's also to say, what is my flow through? I need that extra 10% on my ADR. I need it improved. Now, then my job as a marketing person becomes completely different, to move away from driving that volume into the business to turn around and create content on that hotel's platform and footprint to say, look guys, if I'm going to ask you for 10% extra, it's because A, B, C, D reasons are coming on the table, which you will make benefit out. And therefore, my job as a marketing, the whole telling or storytelling around that whole concept changes. And thus, the alignment with operations to say, okay, the ask is a 10% higher rate from what you're getting because you're obviously doing fabulous on your ADR. What is the value addition that you're going to give me when I'm going to go back to my customer and say, pay me 1,000 rupees more because I'm going to give you ABC more. So, that's the kind of shift in the way marketers need to look at business versus the way marketers used to be a part of the business. Very rightly said by you. A lot of owners earlier and a lot of partners earlier used to think marketing as a liability or as an expense center. which is now over the years changing, where the demand and the ask is coming from our partners and our owners to say, no, I need a marketing head, I need a marketing team, I need a strategy, I need a marketing strategy. I mean, even new hotel openings have started becoming so focused on marketing strategies when they open the hotel, because they realize you only jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai is really the call and the mantra for today. And you are only as good as what, or you can only charge as much as what you can showcase to a customer. So that's where our jobs have really evolved, because what we show to the market is what actually converts in terms of the value.
Wonderful. No, great. So I think you also mentioned about how a marketer needs to wear different hats, right? Because there could be different objectives, different focus. And I think it's also a learning which I'm understanding more now, is that how the marketers got educated about what campaigns can actually do for you, right? And especially coming from the business owner's point of view, if they are able to resonate to the fact that this is why we are doing it, I think it makes every marketer's job easier.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it easier, but it also adds a lot of challenges, because there's a long way to go as far as that is concerned, Madhulika. For example, today, even in India, and especially in my company, where we are present in a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities, the ask for digital footprint versus offline footprint is very different. Now, that becomes a bit of a challenge, because like I said earlier, our job is to make sure we get enough eyeballs rolling, we get enough of attention, we get enough of this thing. Now, you can probably capture a lot of that data when you're on the digital platform. How am I really going to be able to turn around and say how much business did I get from a hoarding? Or how much business am I converting from a digital screen at maybe a transit point? Those are things I cannot really, I will be dependent on numbers that are given by the third party at some point of time. So then you go back and you realign to what I said earlier to you, where you start benchmarking your numbers to previous years or previous time, same time, previous years, because as compared to earlier, when there were limited channels of distribution, let's say, for example, there was only one channel of distribution, which was brand.com. Today, you have your OTA partners, and not one, not two, my God, there is a philanthropy of OTAs that work with you. And every market has its own favorite as far as OTAs are concerned. There's a certain comfort level. For example, in our region, we all know there's a domestic OTA which operates fantastically well and is ruling the market right now. And that's the ask, and he does what he does. Forget about that. Today, even social media has become a source of business creation and demand creation. So that one particular activation can have multiple points of distribution and conversion. So for us to simply turn around and say that there is only one way that we can measure is really not correct. It again takes me back to that point. Different markets, different needs, different ask. Today, Radisson, and I say this because today Radisson is a market leader in some of the markets where we are the only operators, where we are the only international or only branded hotel available for a competition. Now, in such a scenario, I don't need to create tactical offers because I know I will get it, but I need to make the market aware that I exist. And therefore, my mindset as a market person needs to change. And therefore, I need to work with not just my partner and my owner, but also with my operations, with my revenue team, with my sales team, to bring a different level of communication that goes out to the customer. So it's not about waking up one morning anymore and saying, okay, I want to put a beautiful video and put the hotel out. There's a lot of work that goes in at the back end before you can actually decide how you want to put it out and why are you putting this out. You control as a market head, as a marketing head. And I think that's the responsibility every marketing person should start realizing, because earlier it used to be just like, okay, I'm just marketing, but that's not true. You as a marketing person need to realize you control the narrative. And that's a very big responsibility. And that's a very, very important position to be in, because what you control as a narrative is what the world will see. So it really is taking you there.
Great. Vikram, you mentioned about currently the Radisson Group is now expanding to both tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, right, in India. Coming back to campaign, now do you we know this, right? Even if the brands are internationally present, there is always a reason to regionalize it for a certain market. Do you adopt the same philosophy when you are regionalizing it for the tier 2 or a tier 3? Or do you feel the need to do it, or you want to sound aspirational to all the markets and come across as a single message? Is there a way you look at campaigning for these markets specifically? Is there a different approach? It's a single approach.
I am again smiling on this because this is also a question that came up when I was presenting at our global offices in Brussels, very recently where
Okay.
I have this statement to say that we may be global, but we are very local. And Radisson today
Okay.
operates in not just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but in some cases tier 4, 5, and 6 cities as well, whether it's a business or a leisure destination. And I think to rephrase what you said, really, it's not about regionalizing, it's about localizing. We can still remain aspirational. We will always be aspirational. The hotel business is about being aspirational for its customers.
Right.
I think the fact that after COVID, everybody realized that I'm done washing clothes and cooking food and I'd rather go out and have somebody else do it for me, means that we have, as an industry, been fairly successful in putting ourselves out there as dream makers and ourselves out there as giving somebody the comfort of not doing what you're doing at home. And to become aspirational because you expect it to happen for you over there. But can I localize it? Do I feel the need to localize it? Yes, and absolutely yes. You will definitely, for example, see a lot of our campaigns and a lot of our assets now, as compared to earlier, having flavors and touches of the region, of the South Asia continent. You will see experiences that are now built around. So now, for example, there is a global thought. There is a global campaign, there is a global experience.
Correct.
We take that inspiration because that inspiration comes with a certain thought process. And we localize it into what we know is A, cost effective, B, creates the right kind of brand impression, C, stays true to what the brand wants to communicate, that we are moment makers. But we could be moment makers even at a localized level. We don't have to involve everything that comes in from elsewhere. Today, 80% of the India market is still domestically driven. And considering the fact that we are domestically driving our own demand at this stage, I think it is so important for us to realize that localization is the key to any and every success that any brand can really take place. Because aspirational does not mean non-relatable. It needs to be relatable to be aspirational. If I don't relate to that storytelling, or if I don't relate to what I'm seeing, then I will not be interested. And my God, Madhulika, you and me talk about it so much. There's so much of content out there today. There's so much of it that customers are faced with time and again, that the attention span, if you don't catch it in the first 5 seconds, you're gone. And in some cases, even less than that. So for you to be able to relate to that customer who's seeing the content you've created in the first 5 seconds, it is so important for you to localize it and to make sure that that guy says, okay, this seems to be real. Let me see what's coming my way. They have my attention. Alternatively, if you put something so aspirational, the guys and the other person is going to say, you know what, I'm never going to get, there's no point. I don't want to see, let's move on. There's a difference. That whole approach has come where you need to localize, but you still need to be familiar and relevant to the market.
Okay, very interesting. Vikram, you spoke about movement makers, right? So movement is all about experiencing something, right? And you very rightly, have commented on the fact that you believe in a very well-rounded approach, which is not just focused on the point of view of revenue, but also about guest experience. So the point of guest experience now brings me to the core point, which I want to talk to you now, is about the era of storytelling. And this is so specific to service sector. I'm not saying it's not prevalent in other industry. It is. FMCG uses it brilliantly. And we have many examples, right? But I think coming to service sector where people are actually experiencing something, right, in that moment, I think the storytelling has a very big role to create a very strong brand or a very strong brand resonance. So do you want to give some more insights and your overall experience with this industry, how this has evolved and what's in now, like when we say way forward for that?
So interesting. You've got my favorite subject, and I keep having these conversations, not just in reviews, but with my partners, with owners, with our industry partners. And it's interesting and super exciting for me as a topic and a concept. I think in the last 2.5 decades that I've been working in the industry and across, like you said, aviation and hoteliering, and internationally as well as in India, storytelling has come a long way from where it was, a long way. I mean, you were absolutely right. FMCG has been using it forever and ever. But did anybody realize why FMCG is using it? Because again, it brings me back to that point of relatable. They need to relate to it and they need to know that, okay, fine, if this is what it is, then I would like to get to that point as well. But even that storytelling evolved for the FMCG industry also, from where they were 2.5 decades ago to where they are. For us as hotels, beautiful images, still shots, still images, a beautiful building, some great landscapes, some fantastic sceneries were our style of storytelling as an industry for a very, very long time. But I think that started evolving, but at a very slow pace, probably about 10 years ago. But what the pandemic did was give a real shot in the arm. That concept of storytelling, I think, went from a 5 kilometer per hour speed or a 10 kilometer per hour speed to suddenly a 250 kilometer per hour speed. Because of the fact that again, I'm going back to that point, the need to capture someone's attention, the ability to communicate to someone and tell them that we are there and we are relevant, we are still alive. For us to say that, look, we are aspirational, we will do things for you that you would typically do at home, and we would want to take care of you while you take care of yourself and other things that you need to take care of, became so important. A very small part of that storytelling was when the pandemic hit, we probably were one of the worst hit industries as well. The whole world knows.
Yes.
One very basic storytelling that had to come out at that point of time is, we are sanitized and we are safe. If you go back and see how all the chains got the same communication out, but in different manners.
True.
And that storytelling came out in so many different ways, touching so many different emotions, touching so many different lives. At every point, the core message was, we are sanitized and we are safe. But in some cases, we had families. In some cases, we had individuals. In some cases, we had groups. But the core theme remained that, and the storytelling kept evolving around that one theme. And I think that is is what a lot of customers caught on to. And that helped in this industry bouncing back at the pace at which it did, which is, thank God, for some of us who continue to have jobs in the industry. But it did bounce back the way it did because we got our storytelling right. And we got the fact that, there is an experience, there is something that we can provide you that you're looking for. Come and enjoy it. For example, getting onto an aircraft, which was taken for granted prior to pandemic, suddenly became a luxury and was not during the pandemic, and for some time post the pandemic also. Continued to be, what do? I want to go for a break. And then that's where concepts like drivable destinations, driving to a destination, 5 hour, get into a car, safe way to get there, visas, countries, everything was put on. That storytelling also had to be done. And then I must, again, I keep going back to something that two of my previous brands have done well, and current brand and the previous brand, where Radisson launched its Radisson Road Trips campaign, where we went to the road saying we are available every 4 hours and drive to us. Or the Taj went out with Dekho Apna Desh, which was a beautiful campaign as well that they put out. I mean, what was the core communication in that storytelling? It was basically telling people, we are there, we are across the country, we are across the landscape. Not that people didn't know, but there was a need to tell that in a story format, so that people knew that there is a different experience that you will get if you go north. There's a different experience you get if you go east, different if you go west, and different if you go south. And when I say east, west, north, south, I don't mean like literally 600 kilometers. I mean as close as 200 kilometers. We wanted to bring that storytelling out because we wanted people to know that if you went last month, for example, from Delhi on a drive to, let's say, Shimla, and now you want to take a drive from Delhi to, let's say, Jaipur, these are two different destinations, different experiences, and will rejuvenate you in different formats. That communication could only come through if we did the right kind of storytelling. And that storytelling involved experiences, culture, touch points. What is it that we are offering them? And that's where storytelling evolved. And it's so heartening. But now the challenge part has come, Adulika, where we've probably story told so many things that now it's come to a challenge point where we need to find new ideas to storytell. And we need to figure out how can we keep that attention, because you can't be repetitive. That's the other side of the storytelling coin, that you cannot be repetitive. Otherwise, you'll lose it. The attention span is gone.
Right. So that actually, you just said what I was going to ask you, that now if I have to ask you the way forward, the future, right? So is storytelling going to take a different turn when we're talking about so much about short form of content? Like I was talking to somebody, they said ki nowadays you have even reels of 2 to 3 seconds. I said, wow, I mean, great. So, how is this going to shape up finally okay, let me ask you straight. What do you see is the future of in connection with service sector or hospitality marketing when it comes to this short form content or the social media kind of a content in relation with a campaign or a storytelling approach that hotels have been adopting?
Very interesting. So I think the future storytelling will depend on the channel of distribution and the channel in which you're telling that story. So for example, your storytelling on brand.com will be very different than your storytelling on Instagram versus your storytelling on TikTok or Facebook or for that matter, even when you're doing storytelling by virtue of your virtual tours and other gadgets. And your storytelling will also depend on what is the key messaging that you want to get out. Today, in the world of influencers, bloggers, content creators, that storytelling, what comes from there, which is getting shorter and shorter by the day, is fundamentally to create that sense of interest and curiosity. Curiosity in today's generation is a big space. I think for this generation, curiosity is what catches their attention. And I think the way forward from what I see is to create that sense of curiosity by these short storytellings, by these influencers and bloggers who come out and put the stories out in such beautiful manners that sometimes I get awed by them and say, wow, what a talent. Because in our time, a video was just a phone out and it's done. In today, the innovative ways that they do it, of course, they need to be super safe. And I keep telling them also that it's so important to be safe in the way you're doing it. But the innovative ideas that they have in presenting the same thing in such a short time is fantastic. And I think that's coming from the point of them creating that sense of inquisitiveness for the customer to then see that and then engage with you on other platforms where the storytelling will be told in a different manner and probably more elaborately. So storytelling for me is now going to become very journey driven. It's going to become very channel driven. It is extremely important for everybody to understand and remember that you need to bind your storytelling thread together from one end of the channel to the other end of the channel. Otherwise, you lose the customer, and it is all going to become very time based. What worked today may not work after 3 months. So the constant investment that brands, companies, hotels need to do on constantly telling stories has to be factored in now. For example, I cannot put out a story today and expect it to hold me for the next 6 months. It won't. So what works today may not work after 2 months because there is something new that's happening in the market. There's something new that's come up and there's a sense of excitement for a completely new thing that the customer wants to see. And therefore that evolution of storytelling is going to become more and more difficult. I think it means that for some of us like you and me, the job will become more hectic because we would have just finished executing one campaign and we'll be ready to do another one.
Absolutely.
But yes, I think that's the future. It depends on the channel you're doing the storytelling, but it's very important. And that brings me to that point that you mentioned about campaigns. I think when one campaign starts or before that campaign starts, it's extremely critical for content to be placed prior to that campaign going live so that the customers can see the entire journey when that campaign is. But when that campaign closes, it is important for us as business owners to reinvent and put the new content out. May not necessarily be around a campaign, but content. I think what we need to look at storytelling in totality is as part of content creation. And content creation is not just storytelling. There are multiple ways of creating content. There are multiple styles of creating content, and content creation builds around storytelling.
Vikram, I think whatever you shared, whether it was about campaign, the different approach and how the whole evolution has happened over a period of time, the different mindsets and about storytelling, I think these are some wonderful insights for all our listeners for this particular episode. I think some takeaways very, very important that came across is, first of all, I think most important is that marketers needs to be a lot more agile in today's time. It's not the time where you sit back and relax after one phase of campaign is over, right? You've got to start gearing up because consumers are becoming very impatient now, and they need something new. There's always a sense of freshness that they want to achieve. So, I mean, and very, very importantly, as owners are now, or rather not just owners, the final decision makers of the people who approve campaigns for their businesses, are gradually shifting their mindset to adopting a different style of thinking about how campaign can benefit, their brand in the long term or their business units in the long term. It's now a challenge for marketers to stay creatively inspired, because now it's time that they keep churning out new ideas every moment and every time. But great insights and amazing insights for storytelling as well, which is again something that you said something interesting about how content is not directly linked with storytelling. We need to look at them a little separately at the same time as well. Thank you so much, Vikram. It was amazing and wonderful to converse with you, and I'm very sure the listeners are going to take some very important inputs.
And I really, really would like to say thank you for getting me onto this conversation. And I hope that I have been able to not just inspire, but also let most of the marketers who are going to be looking at this podcast get inspired, and let them realize, guys, you have the toughest job. You actually portray what you want the world to see. So it's so important for you to remember that your job comes with a lot more responsibility than one can ever think of.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Brewing Talks. Thank you for tuning in. Sign up and subscribe to Brewing Talks on eplog.media. You can also listen to this podcast on Ghana, Spotify, Apple, and Google. And here's wishing you all a great festive time ahead. Catch up soon with our very next episode as I stir up marketing stories only on Brewing Talks.